Welcome to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I am your host, Jason Verlinde, the publisher of the Fretboard Journal magazine. John Rauhaus is playing our music in the background as always. Before we get underway, a huge thanks to our sponsors. Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar is a great vintage instrument store and guitar repair center located right here in Seattle, Washington. Follow them on Instagram or Reverb, see what all the fuss is about, and then come and visit them if you're ever in the Pacific Northwest, and you can come say hi to me. I'm just down the street. I'll meet you for coffee. Peghead Nation is the incredible guitar, mandolin, and banjo instruction portal filled with some of my favorite instructors around. They are giving you all your first month free or $20 off of any annual subscription with the discount code Fretboard when you check out. Go explore, see all the classes they have. You will love it. Isotope, the masterminds behind amazing software like RX10, are giving you 10% off your order with the discount code FRET10. If you have not played with their software before, whether you're doing audio repair stuff or mastering, whatever it is, give it a try. You will be floored at what this stuff can do. We are also brought to you by Stringjoy Strings, a cult favorite out of Nashville that have quickly become one of the fastest growing string companies around. Guitar and mandolin strings now, and they are offering you 10% off your first order with the discount code Fretboard. We also have a Patreon for this show. I'll include a link in the show notes. It's a great way to support us and what I do directly and get some bonus content. That is my housekeeping for this episode. So if you are like me, you may have started the new year making some to-do lists. Maybe you had some resolutions for 2024. Maybe you signed up for a guitar class. Maybe you've already dropped out of said guitar class. But chances are, at the very least, you're using this moment in time to reevaluate things. I know I've been doing that for the last couple of weeks. For me, one of the most revelatory books in recent memory, at least on the music front, has been one that I was handed at last year's Fretboard Summit. Ethan Sherman and Adam Levy authored this book called String Theories. It doesn't attempt to teach you music theory or scales or tell you how to sound like anyone else. It's 200 pages of insights and life hacks and tips and food for thought that kind of just make you wrap your head around how to sound more like yourself, or maybe how to get out of a rut if you're in one musically. I really love this book. I've told a bunch of friends about it. I'll include a link to order it in the show notes. And I love that this is a book that's not really linear. You can jump to any page and get something to chew on. Adam is, of course, a guitar and singer-songwriter hero. He's worked with Norah Jones and Tracy Chapman before and so many others. And Ethan is no slouch either. He spent most of last year touring as Michael Bublé's guitarist, but he has so many other facets besides that. I should add that both of these players are also just incredibly kind and generous spirits and friends of the Fretboard Journal. So with all of that in mind, and knowing that a bunch of you, like me, are hoping to do things just a little differently in 2024, I have an announcement for you. I am handing the keys to this very podcast to Ethan and Adam for a month for a String Theories takeover. For 4 installments, we will hear what these two very insightful musicians and educators have down as their New Year's resolutions. We'll hear what they're trying to do, how they're trying to declutter their lives and their bookshelves. We'll hear about the music that's inspiring them, and we'll also hear from some of their stellar musician friends like acclaimed guitarist Mason Stoops. This is a 4-week experiment. I don't know where it's headed, but I'm super excited. I'd love your feedback to podcast@fretboardjournal.com, and rest assured, I'm stockpiling a whole bunch of future interviews for the Fretboard Journal podcast, which will return to its normal form in mid-February. I should also add that our entire lineup of podcasts, Luthier on Luthier, The Truth About Vintage Amps, Guitar for Introverts, Life on the Fretboard, and Steel, which just posted a great new episode, by the way, are all waiting for you if you have any more space in your listening day. I am incredibly grateful for Ethan and Adam for taking the time to do this. I asked them to, and they took the ball and ran with it. My favorite thing in the world, which I get to do a lot because of the Fretboard Journal, is to be a fly on the wall and hear brilliant minds work stuff out. This is what we get for 4 episodes. It is pretty fun. I love you all. I'll miss you all, though you are still stuck with me reading ads, obviously, and I can't thank you enough for tuning in and letting the Fretboard Journal podcast be an adventure once in a while. Speaking of adventures, our 53rd issue is out now. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. I'd love for you to see the magazine behind this podcast that we put so much energy and time and expense into. It's a beautiful celebration of guitar culture. It comes out every few months. Go to fretboardjournal.com, click on the subscribe button. And now I conclude my very long, temporary goodbye and hand the podcast off to Ethan Sherman and Adam Levy. I hope you love it.
I guess welcome to the String Theory's takeover of the Fretboard Journal podcast. My name is Ethan Sherman.
I'm Adam Levy.
And we're so happy to be here. Thank you to Jason and the Fretboard Journal for having us. Adam, how do you feel about New Year's resolutions?
I love the notion of it. It's always a chance to start fresh and to recommit to something. I'm not the greatest at holding my own feet to the fire. So there's a little bit of a reckoning because as I make my New Year's resolutions, I'm always thinking about, did I nail it for last year? But I love the opportunity of it. And it's just a good reminder that like every time you pick up the guitar can be, you could make a resolution for just that practice session. But yeah, long-term resolutions that's a real challenge.
Totally. I like making lists. I'm definitely a compulsive list maker. So the New Year's resolution thing is sometimes it's an opportunity to make yet another list that I'm not going to complete.
Right. But that's, at least it gives you, at least you know where the target is,
Totally. And over the years, at the beginning of every year, I make a little list of, what are the goals I have for music and the guitar this year. And over many years of making those lists, I've discovered that you eventually want to make lists of stuff that are actually manageable that you're going to do, because over the years you find, that was a totally unrealistic expectation to put on myself. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I've learned to make lists of resolutions that are maybe actually achievable, which is tricky to do if you're ambitious or have big dreams for yourself as a musician or anything like that. But it's a good exercise in discipline, I guess.
Yeah. Did you see the Maestro movie, the Bernstein movie?
Yeah.
Well, okay, here's a spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen it. You might want to just cover your ears for a moment or fast forward. But I was really, it really hit me. There's a point in the movie where Bernstein is being interviewed, and the guy says, "Well, you've done this, you've done that. You wrote West Side Story, you wrote Candide, you wrote Our Town," and Bernstein kind of brushes it off, and he says, "Well, when you add it all up, it's really not very much. I haven't made that much stuff when you add it all up." And this was later in his life. He's not a young man during this interview. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of humbling to think that somebody at that level still could look back and go, "Well, I really haven't done that much." Whereas from the outside, one wouldn't think that at all.
Yeah.
But so when I think about like making lists that are realistic, it's like we have to look forward realistically. What can I really do in a year?
Yeah.
And then you have to look backwards with compassion and go like, okay, I did my best and this is what I achieved. And I think just for me anyway, to keep moving forward, it feels like an accomplishment, even if you don't hit all of the marks exactly.
Totally. And I think when you don't hit the marks, you can take that as a lesson into the next year of, what do I want to keep? Is this something I want to keep trying to do, or is it okay can I discard this?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I want to try this again? I think those are all great questions to ask ourselves. And I guess in that spirit, I guess what are there any goals that you had for yourself last year that you would like to share, that you felt like, oh, I did that, or I didn't do that, or I want to try that again, or anything else like that?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with things that I did get through, and then I'll mention a couple of things that I didn't get, that didn't happen. So one was I wanted to make a trio record with playing guitar with bass and drums, all instrumental, all original compositions. And I've made a bunch of records over my musical life, but not in that particular format. I've recorded with a 3-piece band where I'm singing. I've recorded instrumental music with a organ trio, which would be like guitar, organ, and drums, but not very much guitar, bass, and drums. And that was something I really wanted to do. And I drew kind of perimeters of here's what I want to do, here's how I want to do it, here's who I want to do it with. I made up a budget. I thought of where I wanted to record it, and I really kind of built it out in my mind so that I did a crowdfunding campaign to pay for the recording, and I did all the things that I think is how you're supposed to actually get stuff done, is to write it all down, work backwards, figure out what the steps are, and then just every day keep at it. And I did it. I wrote all the music. I got the band together. I scheduled it. I recorded it. I mixed it, mastered it, got the artwork, kept everything under budget, and released it with from start to finish. It was a little over a year, but that was one of the things at the start of 2023 that I knew at that point that a lot of the work had already been done, but I needed to keep moving it forward and figure out a plan to release it. So that was a success. Getting our book out was a big thing because people probably don't know this, but you and I know it. We've been working on this for a few years, 4 years, 5 years. So to finally get it to be a physical thing that people could hold in their hands and use was a big goal for last year, and that happened. As far as my guitar goals for stuff to practice, I started out the year. One of my longtime students said that he wanted to go back and work through the Mick Goodrick book, this book called The Advancing Guitarist. And he asked me if I would go on that journey with him and, not only coach him on how he could go through it, but I'll also do the work. And I thought, well, that's a cool idea, because I didn't have specific guitar goals at the top of the year. And that book is a great resource if you're not sure what to practice. Right?
It's amazing.
Yeah. So, but both of us flamed out pretty quickly. I mean, I don't want to put that on him, but between the two of us, we didn't get very far into the book.
Yeah.
And then I got so into the nuts and bolts of getting my record out, getting our book out, doing gigs and stuff, that I would say probably 2023 was my year of least practicing at any time in recent memory.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it just goes to show you that so much about, living a life as, someone who plays the guitar, there's a lot of not guitar playing that goes on in order to make it happen.
So much.
Really,
I've said a couple times this past year, it's I think I might have to quit playing music in order to play more music. You know what I mean?
Yeah. but don't do that.
Okay. I want to quote. There's the one more thing from the Maestro movie that hit me was actually the opening scene. Again, this is just like not even a scene. It's just a text card at the top of the movie. So a spoiler in a sense, but not a spoiler in the sense that it's just the first 30 seconds of the movie, which you're going to get if you watch it. So Bernstein's quote was, "The true meaning of a work of art," I forget, I'm going to misquote it, but basically saying that art in and of itself has no intrinsic meaning. And so the difference in how different people interpret it and the tension between different people's interpretations is the meaning of the art.
I love that.
So I loved it too. And I haven't thought this all the way through, so this is half baked, but I really am thinking about this in the New Year's context, and like, basically, what you thought you were going to do a year ago minus, what you did, or plus or minus what you did, equals something. Like in the Bernstein quote, the tension between two people's interpretations of the art is the meaning. And I want to see if maybe there's some meaning or something to learn or discover between what you think you want to achieve and what you actually achieve, without it turning into, oh, I'm a lazy.
Without getting down on yourself.
No, but actually to learn something about yourself and look at it as like, okay, well, what's in there, and what can I learn from this this equation, whether it comes out positive or negative or whatever. Like there's something to learn without it being a place where you judge yourself too harshly.
Totally, and that connects, I think, back to what I was saying when we started about learning to make less ambitious lists. There's a tension there for sure of like, oh, I want to do all this stuff, but I only actually did this much stuff. Maybe next year I only make a list of this much stuff. And then, I can be like, yeah, I did that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And then not have to carry it around for all the years to come. And I mean, really, and that's my New Year's resolution this year, is to not roll over all of the past year's stuff that I didn't do, because for years I would make those lists, and if I got to the end of the year and hadn't done it, I would put it back on the list.
Yeah. You end up with a pretty long list.
So I want to clear the deck. I'm actually giving away pretty much all of my music books. I'm keeping 2, but I'm basically giving away all of the music books that I've used to study out of over the past many years, giving them away to students of mine, because I've learned what I'm going to learn from them, or I'm not going to, and I'd rather that they go into the hands of somebody for whom it's new information and they can discover something in it that's brand new to them and exciting. And I was just starting to feel like, look, I'm just looking over at this pile of books. They were on a shelf, and I've now piled them up vertically because I've got this spreadsheet going with, the names and addresses of students to whom the books are going to go. So I'm just kind of getting it ready to go to the post office. I got to go and get one of those post office bins and bring it home and carry the books back there. So that's my New Year's resolution, is to clear the decks, first of all, and not carry over stuff that I was like trying to figure out when I was 30. I'm just a couple years shy of 60, and I feel like, I'm still going to go back and play the Bach partitas and sonatas and stuff, but I want to give myself permission to like, okay, I've tried to learn that. I tried to get that under my fingers 20 something years ago. It's okay to pass it on to somebody else and so on. So I'm letting all that stuff go. And really what I want to work on this year is writing music and transcribing music from records that I love or am inspired by or whatever, and let go of the idea of scales and arpeggios and like musical material and just only deal with music. So writing music and learning stuff off of recordings, but not so much. Yeah, if I can't play G minor 7 flat 5 arpeggios in every position by now, I think I'm just not going to.
That's funny. We asked a bunch of guitar playing friends of ours to send us voice memos of musical New Year's resolutions that they have. And one thought that struck me as I was listening to what came in from some of our friends was that the resolutions that they were setting for themselves were very much things that they would say, oh, I want to be doing this because I'm not doing it, or because I want to be doing more of it. I would hear them say this and I would think, but like, you already do that. That's who you are. Like, you don't need to be setting this goal because like, this is, I know you'd already be doing that. And I know you, Adam, as somebody who has always placed a premium on playing real music. I've never thought of you as somebody who sits around practicing exercises all day, So it blows my mind a little bit to hear you say that.
It's just when I look over at this bookshelf, it feels like a to-do list more than it looks like a library. I like libraries, but if you have a to-do list that you've been compiling for 30 years, it's not the same as it doesn't have the same feeling as a library. So maybe it was just like a head shift that I could make about it. But I've already promised all these books away, so they're going to find new homes. But that's refreshing to hear from you, because you know me and you know my playing and you know my headspace. So it's cool to hear that feedback from you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got some. We're going to share a few of our friends' resolutions. We've got. Should we say who they are, or do you want to leave that hanging for now?
I can't remember who introduces themselves and not. So we can we can say who they are. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear about your resolutions, but I thought this could be just a little teaser to say who we're going to be sharing in a little bit.
So Molly Miller, Greg Belisle-Chi, and who was the last one?
And James Valentine.
James Valentine. That's right. They all sent in really great stuff. I think whoever is listening to this will definitely take something from what they all have to say.
Yeah, I'm sure I did. Yeah, and if folks don't know, Molly Miller is a great kind of jazz and beyond guitar player in Los Angeles. She tours with Jason Mraz and leads her own trio. And and Greg Belisle-Chi is an incredible kind of jazz and beyond guitarist in Brooklyn, New York. And James Valentine is a great great guitar player, probably best known because he's a founding member of Maroon 5. It's probably where people would know him from. So we're going to share their New Year's resolutions in a little bit. But I'm curious what Ethan's got in store for this year. What's on your list?
Well, I've got it in front of me. Learn and play tunes. I'm in that same boat as you, where I feel like I've spent enough of time in my life playing exercises and being regimented about that. And I just want to, play actual music all the time. And I've found that the more I'm learning new music, the more often I'm learning new music, the faster I get at learning new music.
What do you mean?
Like the more often I'm doing it, the quicker and the more efficient and streamlined the process gets. It feels like, the cogs in my brain are like, okay, we know how to do this, and the process gets more. Like, I don't mean to say if I learn 500 tunes in a year, I can memorize them all on one listening by the end of the year. That's not what I mean. But just, the more reps, the more you figure out, okay, this is a quicker way I can assimilate this. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I've just sort of noticed that about my learning process. The more frequently I'm learning new music, the more efficient I am at it. And it doesn't necessarily mean I retain everything, but maybe I retain it for the period that I need to, for a gig or a recording session. I've got 2 gigs this week that I'm learning a whole bunch of new music for. And I set a challenge for myself that I want to be as reliant on charts, written music, as little as possible. So that means I have to memorize the tunes. And It's not all easy music. But the fact that I'm doing it every day, and the next day I'm going back and reviewing the tunes I learned yesterday before I jump into new tunes, there's this repetition that gets created that seems to make it a little bit easier to pick up the next tune the next day. So that's one thing, just to, learn and play tunes, and to consistently record and listen back to my playing when I'm practicing, even when it hurts, when you're cringing and you're going, oh, I didn't like that. That's often when the most growth happens, when you can pinpoint exactly what you would like to change. Yeah. Even if you can't actually change it in that moment, to know I would like this to be less like this and more like this. To be able to make that observation of yourself is really great. I want to play more gigs of my own at home. I haven't done that for a long time. In the past couple of years, I've been touring a lot. So when I've been home, I've very much been home and not felt compelled to be getting out and organizing a band or anything like that. And now that, at least for now, my schedule is a little clearer, I want to take advantage of that to get out and play around town. Show up for my community. That kind of connects to the last thing, Now that I'm around, whenever my friends go play, I want to go see them. Yeah. And support them. I think that's super important. And I want to listen to a new album every day.
Oh, wow.
Going back to lists, I've got long lists of, oh, you should listen to this record and that record. And here's a, list that somebody you love posted of a bunch of records they love. You want to check all of them out. So I've got all these lists of records I want to check out that I have yet to get the chance to check out. So I'm hoping I can do that way.
David, you know David Cook, right?
Yeah. So he's who I'm talking about here. When I first, I think, met him or followed him, he was in the middle of doing that, and I was like, oh, this is this is really cool. And I just saw he's doing it again. So thank you, David Cook, for the inspiration. Yeah. And then my last one is just to open up Logic every day. Logic, the recording software, whether that's for myself or for somebody else. I don't really care. I just want to open it up every day and see what happens.
That is really good. That's something. Yeah, I might steal that. I made in 2014 a little record at home using Logic, and the whole point of the record, I didn't even really release it. I just released it to like friends and family. It was a very inside thing, but I recorded a bunch of songs just as a way to learn to use Logic. And this was, almost 10 years. Well, yeah, just 10 years ago. So it was, I don't even remember which iteration of Logic it was. Definitely didn't have the availability of a lot of the plugins that we would have now. And I learned so much by opening Logic every day and working on my record. And I recorded everything. In the end, I asked Rich Hinman to overdub a pedal steel thing on one track, and I had one other friend send me an overdub. But basically, I played and sang all the instruments at home and mixed it myself. And then besides these couple of overdubs, the only other thing I outsourced was the mastering. And even that, I think now I would probably just I would just use some kind of quick and easy tools for a record that I was not going to release to the world. It didn't have to sound like, it was never going to be on compared to anything else on the radio or on a Spotify playlist or whatever. So I only needed it to sound good within itself. But anyway, I did outsource the mastering to a friend. But I feel so far away from that now. And when I was doing it every day, it was like, oh yeah, cool. You just get started and whatever needs to be done, you get right to it. And now I do home recording so seldom that every time I get started, it's like, I don't have a workflow. So that would be a good, is it because you want to make a record or you want to do overdubs, or like what's your idea of being more Logic fluent?
Both. And this was a year that I started getting hired more than I ever have before to do remote sessions. And like you, I have yet to really find a super efficient workflow. So every time I would get asked to record something, it would sort of be like I was starting from scratch every time. And after a few times of doing that, I was like, this is not sustainable because this is taking way too long to, get a sound that I want. So part of it is to be more available for people who want to like have a good setup so that if somebody's asking me to do it, I can do a job that I'm proud of efficiently. Mm-hmm. And also I've been, as we guitar players tend to do, accumulating plenty of instruments and gear over the years. And it's all sort of here and set up, but I'm not using all of it all the time. And so I want to really get to know the gear that I have and maybe use writing and recording little bits of original music as a way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, people are hearing this as audio, but Ethan and I are recording this on a Zoom call, and so I see him, and I see over his shoulder a boat with half a dozen guitars in it. I see sound treatments on the wall.
And there's more that you don't see stream about.
So the room looks ready to go, but as far as having a workflow and being comfortable with how to get a good sound on all of the instruments that you have. I know you get a good sound playing them, but just like a good recording sound, just quickly this one needs this. Good, go, hit record, go. Oh. Like if you open Logic every day, that becomes a real intuitive thing. I want to get to our guests here, but
Yeah.
before we do, I want to share something with you that I feel like is exactly the right thing. If I can find it here, on January 1st, I went to have lunch with my wife. We went out for Chinese food, super like old school Chinese food, not Highland Park hipster, version, but like this place that's been
Like New York.
It's called the Fortune House. It's in Brooklyn Heights. It's been there probably since the 70s. And anyway, whatever. But the fortune that I got in my fortune cookie totally applies to your logic idea, and I think really to New Year's resolutions in general. This is the fortune I got. It says, the work will teach you how to do it.
Ugh. I love it.
Right? I mean,
that's it.
That's it. The work will teach you how to do it. So I wonder if I can like take this to a print shop and have it blown up like super giant and just paste it on the wall in my studio.
I love it.
If I can do that.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah. Man, well, let's cue up Molly Miller. Let's see what Molly has to say. And I think Jason makes a little blurb, a little thing of show notes in each episode of the Fretboard Journal podcast. So I hope so. We should include links to these folks. So if people if they don't know Molly Miller's playing, or Greg Bilal Cheese, or James Valentine's, they can check them out.
Yeah.
But here is Molly Miller, her New Year's resolution.
Okay, goals for 2024. I always do this each year, write out what I want to accomplish and do with my guitar. So it's nice to share them. The first thing is consistently practice with my phone in the other room. I find that it gets real slippery if my phone's in the room. So keep my gadgets out of sight. Number 2, release more music. There is a ton of like solo guitar arrangements, trio arrangements, and like new tunes I'm working on that I want to be less precious about and just record. A lot of them are covers. Just record them and put them out and be less precious about it, because I'm sick of sitting on them. I want to share them. I feel like they capture often what I am doing when I'm playing a gig in town. So it'd be nice to just put them out. Gig journal. After every gig, I like to write down just a couple sentences. What was a highlight? What was a low light? What do I need to work on? What worked? What's going on? Things like that. I find that it makes me more present in my gigs. I have a new record coming out, so I want to tour that record with Jen and Jay. So I'm already setting up some stuff for the West Coast and the East Coast and hits while I'm on the road with Jason, hopefully some international stuff. So I want to prioritize that this year. I find that sometimes I don't prioritize my tour with my trio enough. And speaking of the trio, I want to keep making new music for the trio. We have about half of another record, not the ones coming out in May, but another record that we've been working on. So it'd be nice to do the second half. So I have another whole new album kind of with all the tunes ready at the end of the year, so I can put it out record it in 2025. Hopefully even put it out then. I don't want to have so much time between records. So yeah, new music, record, good practice, gig journal, that kind of stuff. Thanks for asking. Happy New Year.
Wow. Solid gold right there.
Go Molly.
Yeah,
wow.
Go Molly.
Do you think she sleeps?
Well, it's funny what you're saying, like about, when we listen to these resolutions, like I already think of Molly Miller as that person that she's, describing. She's very ambitious. I think of her as somebody who has put out a lot of music. I mean, maybe not albums once a year, but, albums, without too much of a gap. But there's stuff on YouTube of her like playing with her trio or with her brother. And I think I can't imagine Molly practicing with her phone anywhere near her unless it was as a metronome. But yeah, it's good to hear her, commit or recommit to these things, because that sounds like she's going to have a real banger of a year. That sounds great. Focused practice, release music unpreciously, and prioritize touring with her own group. And you know this, Ethan, and me too. Like, if you work as a side person, it's easy to kind of fill up your calendar with when people call you and say, hey, can you hold these 2 weeks in April? Hey, can you hold these 3 weeks in August? And before you know it, your calendar's pretty full and you're tired and you don't want to like send dozens and dozens of emails to book your group and like do all of the follow-up and logistics. And it's just so much work. But that's what you have to do if you want to, either, like Molly's talking about touring with her trio, you're talking about playing more in town with your own music, all that stuff. If you fill up your calendar with other people's plans, it's real easy to just go, oh, I'll get around to this next year, right?
Totally. And it's hard when you're excited about playing other people's music and you want to do it and people are asking you to do it, like the past, I don't know, 2-ish years, that's started to happen in my life more and more really for the first time. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to have these experiences, but yet, I also want to, make sure I'm nurturing my creative self, because you can't have one, or at least I don't feel like I can do a good job, feel good about one without having the other. I love that balance.
Yeah.
And I think Molly is somebody who totally epitomizes that.
Yes. Yes. Well, let's listen to another. This is fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is James Valentine.
Hey, Adam and Ethan. Thanks so much for your book this year. It's really helped me in laying out my goals for this year. My first goal is to enter into my practice journal every day. Just from doing that for the last month, I've realized I'm practicing way less than I thought I was, just by looking back at my entries. But my entries are also keeping me focused on a day-to-day basis, because there's just so much information out there on the internet and so many different topics and things to work on. It's hard to stay focused. So specifically what I'll be working on, I've got the 12 Bach inventions that were arranged by Barry Galbraith. I'd like to finish out learning all of those. I'm working on the diminished scale. I know the symmetrical patterns, but Gilad Hexelman post on his Patreon reminded me I don't really know the diminished scale all the way up and down the neck in a way that I would like to. So I'm going to be working on getting that under my fingers and utilizing that. And I'm also continuing to learn all the solos from the Steely Dan catalog, just because that's my favorite music. And there's some really great vocabulary in there. And I know a lot of it, but not all of it. And I'd like to get all of that under my fingers. And hopefully in January, I'm going to hone down on a couple other more specific goals. Sight reading. I think I'll throw that in there too. I like what that does for my brain. But looking forward to progressing in 2024.
Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful.
Wow. Thanks, James. Wow. There's a lot there to where I hear that and I'm like, man, I want to do that too. Bach inventions, get at me. Sight reading, like, yeah. I definitely relate to what he said about sight reading doing something nice to my brain. To know that muscle is one that is continuing to be flexed. You just end up feeling like you can get to the music a little faster.
Yeah. My friend Noel Akchote just released an audiobook about reading on the guitar. It's something he did on Bandcamp, so there's no paper book of it. It's just an audiobook with I think a dozen chapters. And he's made that like a primary part of his practice routine for the past 10 or 15 years has just been reading every day.
Yeah. Does he read like music, or is it like, guitar sight reading methods?
No, not method books. Classical music, like music not written for the guitar, but just the great works, great classical music. He finds a way to bring it onto the guitar, whether that's something he can play as an unaccompanied, sort of fingerstyle thing, or something that he multi-tracks where he plays all the parts of a string quartet.
Wow. Does he do it just to read it? Well, I guess I'm answering my own question here. It sounds like it becomes a performance vehicle just as much as it is about reading. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, because he's actually released a lot of this music.
Wow.
He's like the kind of like what Molly Miller was talking about. That's what Noel has been doing, like to the extreme. He has released so much music so unpreciously, which is a nice thing about Bandcamp as a platform, is just you can wake up in the morning, get an idea, make a record, make a little piece of artwork for the cover, and release it in the same day if you want to. Like you could release a record every day. And if you're really into reading music, as Noel is, the music already exists. You just have to kind of focus your day around getting it recorded. And he talks about in his audiobook just how, it really makes you very clear about the guitar, like, where the notes are and
what's easily accessible, what isn't.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he really talks about what it has done for his playing, and I'm sure James will find that too. Man, I love the Steely Dan solos idea because they're so iconic, and as he says, there's so much vocabulary in there, and it's not like, oh, I'm going to learn all the Walter Becker solos. It's like it's Walter Becker and Jay Graydon and Larry Carlton and Jeff Baxter and Denny Diaz, and like these are all players with some real personality.
Totally.
And so that's a really cool goal.
On the reading tip, here's what's on my music stand right now.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to just say what it is. It's Ludwig von Beethoven complete string quartets.
So
holy cow. And it's like an inch thick or more.
I'm not doing what Noel Akchote does. I'm not that ambitious with it, but I've had this book for about 10-ish years, and most of that time it has sat on a bookshelf. And we were talking, whenever we started talking, about that idea of, when we're playing music, having it be real music, not exercises. And I think working on reading standard notation as a guitar player, there is definitely a temptation to, get your Berkeley books, get your, there's so many wonderful method books for developing the skills of reading that it can be very easy to just kind of live in those when you work on your reading. And that'll certainly give you a lot of skills, but to actually be reading and actually hearing something like this come out, even if it's extremely slow and there's only one part, it's a string quartet, right? So there's two violins, viola, cello. The viola and the cello are in clefs that I want to say alto or tenor clef. And then I think maybe the cello is in bass clef. Point is, I'm not comfortable reading in those clefs. At least it would be like hunting and pecking. So what I do is I try and just get a few pages in every day. I'll probably do it when we finish this up, just alternating between the first or the second violin line at a tempo where I can actually, get the music out. I'm certainly not playing it how it's meant to be played, but if I can just get a few pages in every day until I get to the other end, then I can maybe get another book.
I love it. I sometimes do with like the Bach partitas. It's really not a sight reading benefit, but it's just some kind of musical benefit. Is, while I'm practicing, one of the movements, sometimes I'll put on, a recording of like Hilary Hahn playing that. And sometimes I have to slow it down on YouTube to 75% or 50% so that I can play along. But it's really neat to hear it as music and then go back to it, just off the page and kind of go back and forth a little bit. More like what you would do if you were learning music for a gig and not thinking of it strictly as a, sight reading, specifically as a sight reading skill, but just, okay, I'm just trying to get inside this music. And that's just one interpretation. Doesn't mean that her interpretation is the one, but at least it gives you because with Bach, there's not much in the way of articulation or dynamics. And so you have to make choices. And so it's at least you get a sense of, okay, this is what one person chose. And this is,
Totally.
Yeah.
The cool thing about the Beethoven book is that it's got a lot of articulation and dynamics in it. So to try and play those as you're reading, that is something I haven't done a lot of over the years. I'm just like trying to get the notes and the rhythms. So to be also trying to pick up those other elements, which are of course so important as well, is it's great to try.
Yeah. Man, let's listen to our last guest.
Yeah, let's listen to Greg.
Friday, December 29th. This is Greg Belisle calling from Brooklyn, New York. Today I actually kind of wrote in my journal some of the things that I was planning on for 2024. Musically speaking, kind of guitar-centric stuff. I wanted to start teaching myself a little more piano and songwriting and singing, and wrote down what bands I wanted to focus on and what kind of music those bands were going to play. But I think the big thing that jumped out to me was the resolutions that I was planning for myself that were kind of outside of the music realm, more just kind of general life stuff. And in 2024, I just wrote that I wanted to make more time for my health, exercise and eating well, and mental health, make sure that I'm breathing or meditating or making sure that I take time off, actually letting my brain, my mind, my spirit absorb things in an undistracted way. Wanted to see more music when my calendar allowed, cultivating my community. Wanted to make time for kindness, for more reading and more Broadway plays and enjoyment and intentional listening. Kind of following my whims. I want to do more sketching and writing poetry or exploring photography, just kind of following where my interests take me and not being too concerned about it. And I wanted to make less time for projects that I didn't want to do or don't want to do. And, 2023, I was fortunate to play a lot and be busy, but some of it wasn't exactly what was on my high priority list. So just sorting that stuff out. I want to make less time for social media and distractions in general. And most importantly, I want to make less time for not writing down my ideas and not kind of answering that creative call in the moment. All right. Happy New Year's, everyone. Happy New Year's, Adam and Ethan. Thanks for your work.
Thank you, Greg. Holy cow.
Yeah, holy cow indeed. Well, yeah. I love the that there's things to do more of and things to do less of. Because I think we all have to figure out what that is for us. Like, it can't always be more, more, more. And maybe for me, that's like the crux of the biscuit of my own thing of like letting go of this never-ending to-do list, you know? And you do that by saying, okay, I want more of this. I want less of this. I love that Greg is talking about, you know, sketching and writing poetry and taking photographs and like just being a human, being an artist.
Yeah. Obviously, you know, we're guitar players. We're recording this for a guitar-centric publication, but it can be very easy to just like get so zoned in on our own little, you know, narrow creative worlds, and to remember that there's life beyond the fretboard can definitely help bring us new and fresh perspectives on the fretboard.
Yeah.
You know, Greg seems to get that.
Yeah. It's super good for us to do for ourselves. And I think that it also helps because assuming that we're playing music for people who aren't always musicians helps us, I think, relate to where other people are coming from, which is not always from a guitaristic place, but just from a life place, you know?
Totally. I think folks who write songs with words, they can get there easier because, you know, how many songs can you write about songwriting? Right?
Right. But it's very easy to write a guitar etude about guitar.
Yeah. And everybody, you know, everybody's going to have a different meaning of what that is. The definition of that for me is going to be different than what it is for you or for Greg or for anybody. So there's no absolutes on what that means. But I think as if you're somebody who writes your own music, yeah, to try and find outside things to, you know, other creative pursuits to get excited about is super cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, like you said, I also love the doing less of thing. I saw a lot of people in my social media world posting ins for 2024, outs for 2024. This is in, this is out.
Yeah, I don't know who started that, but I've seen some of those too. And I think that's a great, if you haven't already made your to-do list or your resolutions for the year, or even if you have, you can always amend them. I think ins and outs that's a great way to organize it. And, you know, getting back to guitar stuff, it's like, yeah, these are the things I am going to practice. These are the things I'm not going to practice. And I'm not going to waste any time, you know, worrying about whether I should or shouldn't practice. These are the things that are in, these are the things that are out. And then you zoom out and then you see it's not all guitar stuff on the ends. It's breathing and,
totally,
you know, taking care of yourself on the ends, and on the outs is for some people is alcohol is out, or, you know, whatever it is. So yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we call this a wrap for our first episode? This seems like a good place to
totally
to stop.
This was fun. I certainly learned a lot doing this.
Yeah,
I hope you did too.
I did. I hope everybody at home did. And we're going to do a few more of these, so tune in next week. Thanks so much to Jason Verlinde and the Fretboard Journal for inviting us to be here.
Yeah, thanks. We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye, Ethan.
Bye.
All right, that was installment 1 of Ethan Sherman and Adam Levy's Takeover of the Fretboard Journal podcast. The book that they authored is called String Theories. I can't recommend it enough. Again, there's a link to it in the show notes. Keep the feedback coming, folks. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Send me an email to podcast@fretboardjournal.com. And we all 3 of us, will see you next week around the same time.